Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Gorowski. I'll be your host for today. This is one crazy week. I think we have somewhere between 25 to 30 live events coming your way. The school year is racing closer and closer to an end now that it is June. But this week we are celebrating World Ocean Week. We have a Canadian Environment Week where we are looking at air and ocean and freshwater and Arctic, forests and things like that. We also have ECOP Canada with us this week. So early career ocean professionals sharing some of their stories and some of the really interesting work that they are doing. So there are a lot of events for classrooms to join in this week. For example, if you go to exploringbytheseat.com/Ocean Week, you can find all of the live Ocean Week events we have coming up. There was a newsletter that went out last night as well with some updates, and we'll probably put one out maybe midweek just to catch up on everything that's been happening. Okay, we've already had 3 ocean events this morning. We were in South Africa with Sandcog, where they rehabilitate and release South African penguins. We were in Nicaragua with the Sea Turtle Project down there, talking to some of the community members and the work that they do. And then at noon, we had Erden Arush with us, and he, in 2022, was the first person to row solo across the Pacific Ocean north of the equator. Everybody does it south of the equator. He was the first one to do that north of the equator. So what have we got going on today? Well, this could fit in both of our categories with our Ocean Week events and also with our Canadian Environment Week. So we have Alexandra Mayette joining us today. She is interested in knowing things like how many belugas are in the Beaufort Sea in the Northwest Territories. So she hops on planes over the Arctic Ocean and she counts these beluga populations, which is one of the largest in the world. So she knows all kinds of great things like interesting facts about belugas, their habitat, food, predators, all kinds of interesting things about these Arctic mammals, as well as how they are being impacted by climate change. So let's bring Alexandra in with us right now. Hey, Alexandra, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
All right, good. It's great to have you with us. You've joined us a few times in the past to share the work you're doing, and I believe you're in Manitoba?
I'm now in New Brunswick.
Yes. Gotcha.
St. John,
right.
New Brunswick.
Very cool. Well, it's great to have you with us. I know that you've got a great little presentation for us. We'll play some Kahoot. We'll take some questions. Let's get into it.
Yeah, I'm excited. All right, let's just quickly share screen.
This can always be an adventure. Sometimes it works beautifully when we test, and then for some reason we go live, but not today. Today it looks good.
Good. All right. Okay. Hi, everyone. As Joe mentioned, my name is Alexandra, and I'm a marine biologist. And today we're going to talk about counting beluga whales in the Arctic. So, as I mentioned, I am a marine biologist. I really like to be in the water, to be by the water, on the beach. And over the last few years, I've been working on different projects with different sea creatures. Sometimes they look a little weird, like sea cucumbers. Sometimes they look a little cuter, like beluga whales. I've been also working with narwhals. And most recently, I've been working with the endangered North Atlantic right whales in the Atlantic Ocean. And so I've been a little bit all over Canada. I grew up in Gatineau, Quebec. So French is my first language, if you noted my accent. So this is me when I was 12-year-old. And I've always really loved going outside, going by the water, collecting seashells, and really exploring the water. So when I went to university, I decided to study marine biologist. And I moved east of Quebec in a little town called Rimouski. And this is where I learned how to work with sea cucumbers. So this is a sea cucumbers that I'm holding in my hand there. But then I was even more excited. After school, I decided to keep going. And I moved to Manitoba, to Winnipeg, to keep studying at the university. And then up there, my professor asked me an important question is like, we need to know how many belugas are in the Beaufort Sea. So they sent me all the way up to Northwest Territories in a city called Inuvik. So this is me coming out of the plane with my big parka. You can see snow everywhere, pretty chill. And this is where we went to count beluga whales. So just before I explain how we count belugas, let's talk about beluga because they're pretty cool animals. So there are two families of whales. We have the baleen whales, which are usually bigger whales, and they have those baleen plates, which are made of the same material as your fingernails and your hair. And you might remember this is the kind of whales you see in Finding Nemo. And usually baleen whales will use very, very small little creature that we call krill. So they usually get big glumps of water, keeps all the food inside their mouth and push back the water. The other family is the toothed whale. So as you can imagine, toothed whales have teeth. So dolphins and orcas are part of that family. And our beloved belugas are also part of this family. And having teeth means that you can eat bigger food. So belugas usually will eat big fish, small fish, sometimes even octopus. They can even get harder crustacean like crabs and even little shrimps. So in Canada, we can find belugas mostly in the Arctic Ocean. So this is a map of Canada, and all of the green, the light green area is where we can find belugas. So you'll see it's mostly up there in the Arctic Ocean, but we do have a small population that lives in the St. Lawrence estuary in the province of Quebec. And so the Beaufort Sea is all the way up there, as I mentioned, just above the Northwest Territories. So living in the Arctic means you need to be adapted to very specific environmental conditions. So the Arctic Ocean has very cold water. It's about -1 degrees, so very cold. There's a lot of ice everywhere. So belugas are very well adapted to live in that specific environment. So let's talk about one of those, a few of those characteristics. So first of all, belugas are the only whales that have white skin. And we think this might be helpful to kind of camouflage between the ice in the Arctic. The other characteristic is that belugas don't really have a fin on their back. And that's because they're actually very strong and they can break the ice with their back. So belugas or any whales needs to go at the surface to breathe. But if there's ice covering your exit, they'll actually break the ice to create those holes and be able to breathe at the surface. Another important characteristic is they have a thick blubber layer. So blubber is usually fat. So they have a big fat layers that keeps them warm inside, even if they're in very, very cold water. And one really exciting, and this is, I think, the most cool facts about belugas, is that they have a melon head. So the melon head is filled with oil, so liquid oil, and allows them to do echolocation, just like a bat in the air. So this allows them to send signal that will bounce back on food, and then they'll get the signal, and that's how they found food in the water. That's also how they can communicate between each other. And because it's actually filled with oil, it's actually very squishy and soft. So as you can see on the video, it's not hard and it's very soft. All right, a few more characteristics about belugas. So they can grow up to 4.5 meters. So that's about 2 size of an adult, average adult. They can weigh up to 1.5 ton, which is about the same weight as a rhino. They can live up to 60 years. and they can dive from 2 minutes to 25 minutes without coming back at the surface to breathe. Belugas also have predators. So some of the predators are iconic animals from the Arctic, such as polar bears. And we also have the killer whales or the orcas. But another predator or people that will hunt belugas are Inuit communities. So Inuit communities are indigenous communities that we have in the Canadian Arctic. And as you can imagine, living in the Arctic, you can't really grow a garden or have trees that will produce fruits to eat. So you have to hunt animals that are available in your environment. And so that means like some people will hunt belugas to feed their community, but they're very sustainable and they only take whatever they need. So the population is still very healthy and good. All right, I have one question for you that you can answer in your class. Maybe put your answer in the chat if you can. So what color is a baby beluga? Do you think it's white, gray, or blue? I'll give you a few seconds. I know there's a bit of a delayed. So what is the color of a baby beluga?
Okay, there is a few second delay, but some is starting to come in. I've got 2 white and a gray. No blues have come in yet. And then, oh, another white just came in.
All right, give you a few seconds. All right, maybe you have an answer in your mind or you shared it with your class. So baby belugas are actually gray. So they are born gray, and as they grow, they become more and more white. And when they're adult, they're fully white. And that's how we can recognize often how old the beluga is by the color, if it's very dark or very white. All right, another question that you can answer in your class. Who do you think is the most related to belugas? Is it the narwhal, the orca, or the seal? So think about characteristics of belugas. Think about who would be the most related to belugas.
All right, we got some starting to flow in. 3 so far for orca. Nothing for seal. Nothing for narwhal yet. I think that toothed whale action, everybody's picking orca right now.
Good call. That's very close, but it's actually the narwhal. So narwhals are almost cousins with belugas. They have very similar characteristics. The orca is a toothed whale, so you're almost right. But narwhals are toothed whales. They also have the melon head to do echolocation. And as you can see, they don't have the dorsal fin on their back. And one very cute anecdote is that there was one time one narwhal got lost from the Arctic and got all the way down to the St. Lawrence estuary and was adopted by a pod of belugas. So as you can see, there is the narwhal here, and you can see all the other belugas. So the narwhal has been living with belugas for the last few years, and it's still surviving with them. So that's a really cool fact. All right, let's go back to our question about counting belugas, because that's why I'm here. So there are different ways that a marine biologist wants to count how many animals are in a population. Sometimes it's very easy. We can just go on the beach, count the eggs, or count the little babies that don't run very fast. Sometimes like seals, they will come out of the water and haul out on rocks, so we can easily count them. Sometimes we can just take a boat like with the orcas, and we can go really close to shore and count how many whales we see. And sometimes it's even harder, and we have to gear up with our scuba gear, go underwater, especially for like plants or small crustaceans. We often have to go underwater to count them. But with belugas, and especially in the Beaufort Sea, they live in such a big area that we can't just take a boat and go out on the water. It would take too much time. So we actually have to go on a plane. So you can see here, this is the inside of the plane. So we have our survival suit because it's cold outside. And then there's little windows, just like in your regular plane. And then you can see down and look at how many whales you detect. So this is what we call an aerial survey. It's used for not just belugas, other animals as well. And as you can see, the first thing that we need to do when we do an aerial survey is planning routes. So we have to decide where we want to go, where we think will be the most likely that we see belugas. And you can see this screenshot of a computer. We need to draw little tracks of where the planes will go, and then just like a GPS, the plane will follow those tracks. The next step is we need to check the weather. So you don't want to go on an aerial survey if it's too windy or if it's raining, or maybe if there's a lot of big waves, because that's all elements that will make it very hard for observers to see whales. So we need really good weather, really good conditions. So we check different maps. These are very detailed map that will kind of show us the weather for the next few hours. And if we have good weather, we have the thumbs up to go. Then we jump on the plane and prepare our equipment. So this is me with my fancy headset and my mic, because it's very loud on the plane. And to be able to hear each other, we have to talk in the mic. And then we have, you can see on the bottom of the plane, we have a camera facing down that will take photos every minute or every couple of seconds. So then we can look back and see if we missed any belugas in the photos. So it's not a hole in the plane. There is actually a window, so no one is going to fall off the plane in the middle of the ocean. And then we take off, and then we fly over the Arctic Ocean. So this is a video of me, so you can see the ice on the water. And you can actually see a very big variety of landscape across the Arctic. Sometimes there's a lot of ice, sometimes there's no ice at all. You can see the trees sometimes by the coast, so it's very pretty to see from the plane. All right, so now I'm gonna make you count how many whales you see in these photos. So these are photos that we're taking on the plane. So you should talk with your class, see how many belugas you think you see in these photos, and then we'll see if you found them all. So I'll give you a few seconds. You can either put it in the chat or just think about it in your class.
Okay. I'm starting to get a pretty consistent 4 coming in via the chat. Got one person saying 6, but everybody else has said 4.
All right. Okay, so that was an easy one. So good job if you found 4. So you can see I zoomed in on the photo. There is 4 belugas in this one. So luckily with belugas, with their white skin, they kind of pop out in the water. All right, this one is a little bit more difficult. See how many you can find in this one. They're quite small when we're very high on the plane. They're not as big as when you're very close to them.
Okay. I'm getting some answers of 4 again, but I also have a 5 in brackets. They can see a little one, maybe a baby one.
All right.
Or another 5, yeah.
5, 4, 5, all right. So we have 2 over there, right? And then we have actually 3 over there. And a good eye for those who have seen the 5th one, because it's actually a little baby. If you see it, it's next to its mother, and you can see it's darker because it's actually gray. It hasn't turned white yet. So good on you. And last one, maybe this is the most difficult one. So this is what happened when you have a little bit of wave or some glare from the sun. So then it becomes to be a little bit more difficult to find the whales versus just waves. So I'll give you a few more seconds to think about how many you can see in this photo.
Okay, we're getting some 4s again. It's definitely tricky. You can see a few of those white caps that you could maybe be mistaken. I've got one saying 4 or 5. The consensus is 4 on this one.
Yeah, all right. Well, you guys are really good. So there was 3 over there and then 1 a little bit out, but the rest were just waves and white caps. So definitely a little bit challenging when you don't have the good weather conditions. So good job. I should all take you on my next aerial survey. You're so good observers. And so when we finish all of our flights, we come back, and then that's where we get behind the computers and analyze the data. So this is the map of where we flew. And then so you can see all the gray tracks of where the planes went, and then all the colored dots of where we saw belugas. Sometimes we saw a baby and the mother. Sometimes we saw big groups. And then when we want to finalize our number of belugas, we need to do a little bit of math. So maths are important. Stay in school and learn your mathematics because, might be useful for counting belugas later. But obviously, we didn't see every single belugas in the population when we were on the plane. Sometimes whales are on the water feeding. Sometimes they're just not in the area where we flew. So to get a good estimate of the whole population, we need to do a bit of mathematics, and we came up with this number. So for the Beaufort Sea beluga, we estimated 40,000 belugas in this population. So this is one of the biggest in the world, and it's a very healthy. They're not decreasing, so they're pretty stable. So that's a very good sign for this population. But obviously, there are some threats to belugas, and especially with pollution and climate change that you've all heard of, especially in the Arctic. We see increasing in temperatures. So the air, the water is all getting warmer. And because belugas are very adapted to being in a cold environment, they're not doing very well if it's getting warmer and warmer. Another thing is that we have found plastics in belugas. So sometimes the pollution and the plastic that we throw in the water here with the currents and the wind gets in areas like the Arctic and gets in the fish, and the belugas eat the fish. So then we found some elements of plastic in different animals in the Arctic. And then finally, with climate change and less ice in the Arctic, there's a lot more boats going in the Arctic, and the boats are creating a lot of loud sound in the water. And that affects belugas because it kind of masks their echolocation, so that affects them for feeding and for communicating with each other. So those are all kind of threats that belugas are facing. But we can all work together, fight climate change. So take care of the environment, try to reduce your plastic. If you can walk or bike or take the bus. And with the nice weather now, it's really cool if you can take your bike and travel around your city. And then just encourage your friends and families to do the same. And this way we can all try to do a little bit better and help the Arctic and belugas in the Arctic. So that's all for me. Thank you for listening. I hope you learned a lot about belugas and a little bit about how we count belugas in the Arctic.
All right. Perfect, Alexandra. Thank you so much for taking us into your Arctic world and introducing us to the beluga and how we can keep track of them from above. Very, very cool. I am going to, before we do Q&A, so get your questions ready, I am going to load up the Kahoot. I've already shared the link, so we have looks like a few groups have jumped in, but I'm going to share it up here. I will share my screen as well. And then we will go live with the Kahoot. So let me make sure I pick the right one here. There we go. So you need to go to kahoot.it, and then you'll see that it's going to ask you for a PIN number. Excuse me. And so today's PIN is 6235416. So 6235416. We have 4 questions today, some true and false, some multiple choice. If you are paying attention, you should very easily be able to ace this today and maybe even score a spot on the podium at the end. So the right answer is pretty darn important, and the quicker you can put that right answer in, the more points you will get in each round of today's Kahoot. So let's give it another second here. Alexandra, let's ask a quick question here while we're waiting. So you shared the narwhal with us. So it sounds like you've worked on them before. You had that great video of the narwhal with the belugas. So what should we call that projection? Is it a horn? Is it, what's the proper term for it, and what is it made of?
It's actually, we call it a tusk. So just like an elephant tusk, but it's actually an enlarged tooth. So it's a tooth that's growing outside of their skull and kind of out of their head. And it has it's actually a very cool organ from the narwhals, and has a lot of nerves inside. So it's very sensitive, and we think they might be helping them to find food in the water.
Okay, very cool. Well, I think we are ready to get this Kahoot started. Remember, I gave 30 seconds for each question, so there's time. You can read the question and think about your answers. Some of them are multi-select today, which means you have to click multiple answers to get it 100% correct. But here we go. Let's get it going. We've got 3 seconds to count us in, and then we will be live with our Kahoot. So our first question is multi-select. Beluga whales can be found in waters of which countries? So we've got United States, Antarctica, Canada, or Mexico is your option. So let's get those put in and let's see how we do. So you've still got lots of time. No need to panic. Get those answers in. And then, we'll see who's leading after the end of our first round. A few more seconds on the clock. All right. A little bit of a mixture there, but for the most part, we have Canada selected. We have United States selected, which are 2 spots where you will definitely find our belugas. Antarctica, although maybe it would be okay for them, it's definitely very far away from where we would find them. So we've got the silly wildcat holding down our top spot. So let's go again. So I know multi-select can be a little bit tricky. You have to pick a few answers. So one of the best ways to find belugas is from the air. So that's true or false. Let's see how we do. Is the air one of the best ways to count or find belugas? We've got a few more seconds on the clock to get an answer locked in. All right. Let's see. Most went with that's true. Okay, that puts the silly wildcat still in first place, holding down that top spot. Let's get to our next question. Well, oops. Oh yeah, there we go. So belugas have no natural predators. Is that true or is that false? No natural predators, true or false? We got a few more seconds on the clock. I'm wondering about the predators of beluga whales. They are pretty big. Maybe they don't have them. Maybe they do have some predators. Let's see where we end up at the end of this question. We got a couple more seconds on the clock. There we go. All right. False. That is absolutely correct. We learned of different predators, including us humans. predators like orcas. So there's definitely some predators for the beluga. That puts, who is that in first place? The gladfinch. We've got one more question. This, again, is a multi-select. So you want to pick, I'll give a hint for this one. There are 3 answers you're going to want to pick for this one. We got 30 seconds on the clock. What are some adaptations of belugas? Remember, there are 3 options. So try and pick 3. There, you can leave one of them out. One of them just doesn't belong. Which one is it? You've got a little bit more time still on the clock. Let's see how we end things off here. A couple more seconds on the clock. All right. Let's see here. We had lots of selections of echolocation, white skin, thick blubber. Very good. Elongated tooth is the odd one out. Let's go to our podium. And then we're going to go to Q&A action. Third place, the funny rhino. Second place, the helpful jaguar. And holding down that top spot, we've got the winged quail. All right, boys and girls, thanks so much for playing a little Kahoot with us. I am going to stop my screen share, turn off the music, and we're going to spend the rest of our time doing a little Q&A together. So if you are tuning in via YouTube, which is how we have our crew with us today, send in your questions and let's get started. Let's see. Okay, here we go. I've got some questions here in the chat. Okay, so I've got a student here wondering about satellites. So you're using planes, but are they too small to see from satellites?
That's a really good question. No, we're actually starting to use satellite image to count belugas. They are very small on the image, but it is a good tool, we think, because of the white skin. They really pop out of the water compared to other whales in satellite image. So we think this will be a good tool in the future. It's still very expensive to use, and we can't always control where the satellite is going. So it's definitely a technology that we will use in the future. But yes, we can find belugas in satellite images.
All right. The same classroom is wondering about drones as well.
Yes, so drones will go kind of a little, well, very much closer to the belugas than a plane. So it's usually we won't be able to go as far in the ocean as on the plane or on a boat, but this will allow us to find other good information like scars or sometimes the body condition if whales are healthy and stuff. So we will use drone to find other characteristics on belugas, but we usually don't use them to count a lot of them because it would take too much time and cover large areas to really find them all.
All right. Fifth graders in Calgary would like to know, oops, where'd that question go? Sorry, just went off my screen. There we go. Would like to know if they would show up with heat signatures.
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't know if it has been tested with belugas specifically, but we have been using thermal cameras with narwhals, and we definitely can see the body heat from the belugas. And even as they fluke or their fluke go up and down in the water, they kind of leave a signature of heat in the water behind them. So that's really cool to see in an image. So not yet in belugas, but we've definitely seen them in narwhals. So.
All right. Very cool. Okay, let's see. There's a lot of technology questions today, which is kind of cool. So we saw how that one image was tricky because there were the white caps. Are there any programs that could use artificial intelligence to identify better than we could?
Yes, there's definitely some work with AI to, instead of humans going through all the 1,000 photos that we've taken, to just run it through AI to kind of machine learning and make the computer detect belugas compared to whitecaps. So definitely there's been some training. You often need a lot of image to train a machine learning or AI to really get good results, and for the computers to really be able to detect a whitecap from a whale. But it's definitely been like, there's definitely people working on this, because yeah, it would be much faster if the computer can do it than people. But we usually still have people on the plane still counting, so it's kind of like complementary method. So we do have like the image, and at the same time we have people looking out at the same time.
Okay. Second grade classroom in Toronto would like to know, do they have any defense against predators?
That's a good question. They are very social animals, so they're often seen in groups, as you saw in the pictures. Like being in a group is kind of a strategy for predators, because the predators will, have to decide which one they'll go after. So being in a group is always better than by yourself. And then usually belugas are quite like fast in the water. So compared to a polar bear would have to swim after the belugas, they usually hunt like just on the edge of an ice floe. So they really need to be like in the perfect condition to kill a beluga. So usually belugas like will tend to stay in group, and they usually can swim pretty fast.
Okay. Sound. The sound that they make, does it travel or go very far under the water?
Yes. So they make very different kind of sound. I don't know if you've ever heard videos of dolphins on the water, but it kind of like clicks a little bit. So this is what the echolocation sounds like. And depending on kind of their habitat, it can travel kilometers away. So they're very good at hearing, but that means they can hear very things that are very far, and they can be very sensitive to loud sound, even if it's very far. So kind of goes both ways.
Okay. You said that they were social, so this is a good question about, what if two groups meet each other? What do
Mm.
they do?
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, like they will often hang out together. There is people that think they can even share information, so they kind of communicate between each other, and maybe one group goes hunting this way and the other group goes hunting that way. And if they meet each other, they can share information. They will also, we see if they have babies, that sometimes they will, other belugas will babysit the babies so the mother can go feed. So there's a lot of things that can happen when big groups are together. And yeah, they're very social. They like to stay and yeah, communicate with each other.
Okay. Um, Another question here about a different kind of pollution, noise pollution. Does that impact belugas? Maybe like right whales, how it does them?
Oh, yes. So as I said, with climate change, we have less ice in the Arctic. So there's more and more ship going to the Arctic, and we think this will be a big problem for belugas and for narwhals. So belugas are, as I said, like because they do echolocation, they're very sensitive to noise. And if you add a lot of vessels or a lot of ships in the water, the propellers and the sound of the ship going through the water creates a lot of sound. So we think this could affect belugas and stress them out, and even kind of masking the echolocation that they're producing. So they can't find food or they can't communicate with each other. So we're trying to find solution to make the ship less noisy often.
Okay. So I've got two more questions here in the chat. They're both from our second graders. The first one is, do you find it cold working in the Arctic? And then you mentioned lots of cool things you've worked with. Do you have a favorite?
Well, the first question. So for the Arctic, it is very cold, depending on the time of the year. So if you go in the summer where I was, it was maybe like 5 degrees, so it's still pretty warm, but definitely need a jacket. But I went back in February, so middle of the winter, and that's where I needed my big parka. And it's also there. It's night most of the day, so the sun doesn't rise in the winter. So it's dark all winter. So that was very different and a different experience for me. And then the second question, my favorite animal, I think it is belugas, because I think they're just so cool and they have so many cool adaptation. The other whales are cool, but they're slow, and I don't know. I think the belugas with their melon head and their white skin and their little gray babies are just so adorable and very cool and interesting creatures, and very intelligent too, as I was saying, with some communicating between each other and talking, sharing information. So I think that's my favorite species.
All right. I'm going to add one more question here, and that is maybe some advice. So, what advice would you give to someone who was maybe interested in marine biology, maybe even a specific, they knew they wanted to work with marine mammals?
Oh yeah. I think that like you should look for a school that have a program in biology. So in Quebec, that's where I move away, because one of the only university I could find was out of my hometown. So I had to move and be closer to the water. So just find a university that has a program in marine biology, and you will often meet people that work with animals, whales, or any other type of sea creatures. And then that will allow you to get in contact and maybe even find ways to work with marine mammals later. So find a program that is focused on marine biology. We have a bunch in Canada. It doesn't have to be necessarily by an ocean. So I studied belugas in Manitoba, in the middle of of Canada. So there's definitely different programs across the country.
Okay. Well, I want to start out with a shout out to our classrooms. Thanks for joining us live today. Thanks for sending us some great questions. And then, Alexandra, it's always great to steal a little bit of your time and share some of the work you're doing. And yeah, now working with the northern right whales, who we know are very, very endangered.
Yes.
So it's important that we're able to keep track of how
Mm-hmm.
many there are, and yeah, look for those things that are affecting them and what we can do for conservation. So, Alexandra, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, no problem. That was really fun. I hope you learned a lot.
All right, we're going to sign out for today. I'll put the link up here one more time. There is a ton of Ocean Week stuff coming up. There's Canadian Environment Week, our ECOP Young Professionals. There is a lot going on. So we hope to see many of your classrooms over the next 4 days. But for now, we're going to sign off. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thank you so much.